I'm here at the beautiful Castle Oak Productions to talk to sound designer and fellow author David Sonnenschein. Let's head upstairs. It's been a while. We saw each other over the summer, right?
Yeah. I was working on a film, and we just finished.
And you're still working on that film, right?
No, we just finished the film.
Oh, you're all finished?
We're done. We're done now. Yeah.
Very cool. And that's Dreams Awake, right?
Yeah. It's a feature film that I've been working on since the pre-production, helping with the sound design, the concept, as well as the execution of the sound.
So how did you get started in the business?
Well, I come from a musical background. From very young, I was playing classically in orchestras. My instruments are wind instruments, particularly clarinet and flute. And so for me, sound has been really a big part of my life the whole time. And I've expanded from that into jazz and world music, and then ultimately into sounds that are not even what we call musical sounds, but just creating things that help tell story and help to create mood and actually affect us in deeper ways too. I work in sound healing as well.
Do you find that being a musician helps you as a sound designer?
Totally. For me, I don't really separate these things, and when I teach, as I do, I teach people how to listen. And the listening, what we try to listen to are very similar to what we listen to in music, things like rhythm and timbre, volume, pitch. All these are musical concepts that really apply to everything. So for me, it's first of all, listening, being able to understand and be sensitive to the environment, then to create the sounds using those listening modes. So really music and sound effects and sound design really for me is all one kind of experience.
Is there any common pitfalls that you see beginning sound designers make?
Yeah, I think that a lot of them want to fill it up with sound and just make sure that everything's got sounds. And a lot of times quiet and silence, or at least relative silence, is really important for contrast. And so that the contrast is something that we need to have as human beings, and not just humans, but the world is about contrast, day and night, the seasons, and so we're sensitive to the changes. And so if people don't have any changes in their sound design, it gets kind of mushy and loses its effect. On the other hand, if a beginning sound designer doesn't pay attention to basic things like background sounds, it can be so empty that it just feels like it's incomplete and unreal, and we're not grounded in where we are. So they often forget to really place the audience in the right situation through the sound.
So who was your inspiration growing up? Who were some of the sound designers that influenced how you became a sound designer?
Yeah, well, two of them are from USC Film School, where I graduated from, Walter Murch and Burtt, and they both influenced me greatly. Walter is extraordinary in his storytelling sound, and the way he allows us to really be able to get inside the whole drama and the character's consciousness and such, and his use of psychoacoustics and his knowledge of such, and his writings are also very informative. Burtt has been marvelous in that he's created sounds that have become icons in the world, created whole worlds of science fiction, Star Wars and such. Wall-E was his most recent one, of course, and just amazing about his creativity and the way he goes about doing things, and his humor and personality comes right through. So I really think those two are on top on my list.
What's the most fun you've ever had on a project?
I did a Foley session for a feature that I actually directed as well, and it had a puppet that was a little caterpillar. And we created it in various scales, and this puppet actually spoke and had a really kind of a gypsy-like personality and moved around a lot. It was really a fun thing to watch. And so I did the body sounds, and I made them with a balloon that I filled half with water and half with air, and then wet the outside of it as well. And I Foleyed the whole film using this kind of squeaky, squishy, wonderful, bubbly kind of object And knowing that I directed this character, I knew very, very intimately what they were doing. And so I could create those sounds, and that was a lot of fun.
What's the biggest challenge that you've had to face as a sound designer? Like a project or a certain scene or a sound?
Oh. Well, in this current film that we just finished, Dreams Awake, a central part of the story is what we call the mystery tone. And this mystery tone kind of infects the main character throughout the story, and it begins as something that is very, very obsessive and creating like a headache, you know, very, very difficult. And by the end of the film, it's actually a conduit for higher states of consciousness. So we had to create basically a storyline that would take this tone from one state to another for the audience to feel what the character's feeling. And we worked with this tone literally over several years and trying lots of different things, you know, recording many different things and then mixing all kinds of different things. Ultimately, we used combinations of like a singing bowl, Tibetan singing bowl, and some chimes, but we had to sculpt them so we weren't getting the attack on them. We would just get the decay, and then I would loop the decay, and then use different kinds of reverbs and pitch shifting and all kinds of mixing to get the exact elements at the right time in the film. And we even ended up using a sine wave at one point because it was actually the pureness of the sine wave helped it out. And we did some pitch bending, and depending on what was happening, the rising pitch had to do with rising of her consciousness or physically rising up the climb on the mountain. So there were a lot of different elements with this mystery tone. It was quite a challenge, and I think we succeeded quite well.
So the sound itself was a character in the film.
Absolutely, yeah.
And so did you have to use it for communication, like as if it was speaking, or was it just more of an overall sense of what was going on?
Well, it started off, as we called it, the mystery tone. We didn't know what it was, and she didn't know what it was, and she talked about it to the other characters who couldn't hear it. So it really didn't have words to it. It was a nonverbal kind of spirit, if we want to call it, and it changed its relationship to the main character during the process of the story, as she became more aware and confronting her own fears, because it brought up a lot of fears for her, and as she plowed through those fears and broke down at certain points and then reached up to a higher place, which is a typical kind of dramatic arc for a character change, the sounds would change as well. And so the audience would feel much more in tune with them as the story moved along, and she was more in tune with them.
So you, apart from being an author, you also teach sound design.
Yeah, I've been doing that for several years, and I teach all over the world. I've been lecturing in Asia, in Europe, South America, and I teach regularly here in Los Angeles at a place called Video Symphony and at Cal State Northridge. And currently I'm developing classes online, so I'll be teaching all over the world from here to Banga.
So people can log in and hear your lectures?
Yeah, there'll be several different modes of teaching. Some of it will be through a 15-week module through a university that they can sign up for. Others will be Skype classes where I teach one-on-one to a full classroom on the other end, wherever they may be. And the third modality will be like a webinar where they can log in and come on like once a week to a classroom or seminar situation with me directly.
What's your favorite part of your job?
I really love the moment when we find a sound that we didn't expect to work in some place where we just didn't know what was going to happen. We struggle sometimes with the, quote, the real world to make it seem like that's what we want, but often when you put in, you know, a dog barking for the dog that's on the screen, it doesn't really impact the audience the way that you would think. So finding a sound that really is like totally out of the box, really something totally different that synchronizes with an image in a way that creates a whole new experience for the audience, is just wonderful. You know, it's like the typical Foley thing of walking in snow and cornstarch is the stuff you use, you know. Kind of, that's a standard kind of thing that people do. But when you're actually producing a film on your own and you're trying to find that right sound, or it can be combinations of sound, sometimes one sound by itself doesn't quite make it, and you just add another little thing like a new attack to that sound from a different sound entirely. And you layer that and all of a sudden, boom, it clicks in. It's just a wonderful feeling.
I don't think that's the real one.